How you doing, Paul? I can't hear you. Can you? I can't hear you.
There's the button.
Hey, Paul.
Hi.
Going with the earbuds. Nobody else at home wants to hear all our exciting discussions?
Absolutely correct. Put those earbuds in, please, now. Why, don't you find this in? No.
Well, I guess that's true. They can always go to YouTube and watch us there. You know. They need
That's what I
reruns.
say.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Dan, I'm trying to rename myself. Or can you do that?
Oh, you want me to? I could probably do it for you.
Yeah. Because I have Michelle's login to host other meetings. Sometimes it logs me in automatically as her.
I actually don't think I can actually change you.
All right. You can tell everybody I'm not Michelle.
I was wondering why she was on here. I was like,
I can
I
try
want to be on here.
log in again. Oh, Dan, you can do it from the participants list.
That's what I'm trying to do it from. It doesn't give me that option because I think you're an actual signed-in account.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you want me to talk to Michelle about getting you your own login and everything?
I don't know. Maybe it's an option.
Okay.
I'll talk to her about it.
All right, I'll write a note as well. I don't think
You got
she's
too
going to be
many
in until
notes.
next week.
Dan, why do you do the separate audio? Is your computer audio not strong enough?
I've never gotten it to work, and
Oh.
I made the phone work, and then, I don't know. I don't want to call the IT people here just to make my microphone work. So the phone seems to do the trick, so I just run with that. Path of least resistance on that one. Alan, you don't have your awesome painting background tonight. Are you sitting back in some luxurious seat? It looks like a very comfortable seat.
It's a very comfortable seat, yes. I decided I'm upstairs tonight. The grandchild is downstairs and the dogs are barking downstairs, so it should be better up here.
Okay.
Hey, Alan.
Hello, Paul.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, sir. Thank you. Mr. Barnes is here. Yes, sir. Can you hear us, obviously?
I can, and I cut out. My internet lately has been really trashy.
And we're missing a significant cadre of the commission.
Here's that way.
Hopefully they're getting a late start. Yeah, because we don't even have a quorum right now.
We need 4, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't hear from people that they weren't going to be here.
Well, that would stink.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised because I know Kim went and dropped off all the material to Jane Marsh at her office. So I would be shocked if she wasn't on. Oh, there's Maria. That's a
There's
quorum.
Maria.
Well, just wait a couple minutes, Paul, see if we just get some stragglers.
Yes. Especially Jane.
Yeah, I agree.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, now I hear everybody. Hi, guys.
Hi, there's Jane. Jane just came on. Hi, Jane.
Boy, I've got a loud volume here. Okay.
All right, so we have I'll just wait another minute or so to see if Tammy and Michael join.
Yeah, I guess if they don't, we'll just see Maria and Michael Barnes.
We will, yep.
Hi, Edie.
Hi, Edie.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Katie.
Yes, we can, Katie. Hello. All right, we probably should get underway, and we'll seat a couple of alternates today. I don't see anybody else at this point, so let's roll. Okay, ready, Dan? Okay, this is the March meeting of the Old Lyme Zoning Commission. Today is Monday, March 8th. We have first order of business here is to seat two of the alternates for two missing permanent members. So we will seat, Katie hasn't had a chance to partake in a meeting, so we'll have Katie Close take one spot. And Michael, you okay if I have Maria join on this?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, and then Maria Martinez will take the second spot. So for the March meeting, we will have our members Jane Marsh and Alan Todd. Joining as our alternates into the meeting for this meeting will be Katie Close, Maria Martinez, and myself, Paul Orzel. Okay, the first item I would like to address is a motion that we amend tonight's agenda. We have Edie Twining here from the Halls Road Improvement Committee, would like to give us a very quick update as to where we stand right now, or where that process stands. So I would take a motion that we amend the agenda to have Edie present as the first item in new business.
So
May I
moved.
take a second? Maria? Oh, Alan second. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed and abstained? Okay, so Edie will be as the first order of business under new business this evening. All right, getting the meeting underway. We have a public hearing this evening. This public hearing is for the special permit modification to cut and fill property to allow construction of extended loop driveway on property located 43 Hatchets Hill Road, Northland Group LLC as the applicant. First, we will move to Madam Secretary.
All right, so let's see if I've got the notice here. Here we go, legal notice. Notice is hereby given that the Zoning Commission of the Town of Old Lyme will hold a public hearing at its regular meeting on Monday, March 8th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via WebEx to consider and hear comments on the following. And it has the WebEx joining thing, which I will not read. Special permit modification to cut and fill property to allow construction of extended loop driveway on property located at 43 Hatchets Hill Road, Northland Group LLC applicant. At this hearing, interested parties may be heard and written communications received. Copies of the application are in the land use office. Dated 24th February 2021. This was published in the New London Day on Wednesday, February 24th, and again on Wednesday, March 3rd. The exhibits, we have A, which is a special permit application dated 2/5/21 with the abutters list. A bonding estimate, wetland delineation. Exhibit A1 is the proposed driveway extension plans. Those are dated 2/12/21. B is the storm drainage design calculations, dated February 2021, prepared by Provost and Rovero, Inc. Exhibit C is the legal notice I just read. Exhibit D is a memo to Tom Metcalf, PE, dated February 16th, 2021, plans for his review. Exhibit E, letter to applicant regarding zoning commission meeting date and time with the legal notice. Exhibit F, email from Tom Metcalf dated February 22nd, possible conflict of interest with respect to reviewing plans. Exhibit G, certified mail receipts for mailing to abutters. There's 7 of those. Exhibit H, email from Tom Metcalf dated March 5th, 2021. We, due to timing, would not be able to complete review for March 8th meeting. Exhibit I, email from Tom Metcalf dated March 8th with information and stating conflict with attending WebEx meeting tonight. Those are all the exhibits.
Okay. Thank you. Is the applicant in the audience tonight?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, David Held, I'm a professional engineer and land surveyor with Provost and Rivero here on behalf of Northland Group.
Yes, I'm Tim Sahaki with Northland Group, the owner and operator of Northland Group.
Okay.
So I will, I'll just go through a summary of what we're proposing here. I did talk to your consulting engineer earlier today, and we went over some basic concerns that he had with this. I don't know whether he's communicated those to you through staff or not, but I'm going to go through a summary of the project and just try and hit on in the presentation what some of his concerns were. So the property in question is 43 Hatchets Hill Road. It was originally constructed back in the late 1990s, I believe, for the Diebold Company. So site's been developed for 20 plus years. It was recently purchased by Mr. Suhaki, who has since moved his administrative business office into the facility. Mr. Suhaki is a heavy site civil contractor, specializing in earthwork projects and other forms of heavy civil construction. So he bought this facility and fairly early on noticed the need to do the improvements which we're proposing here, for the simple reason that it's extremely difficult for him to get his equipment in and out of this property. If you're familiar with it at all, or if you're looking at the plans, the driveway comes in, you've got a parking area for employees and passenger vehicles, and then you've got 2 dead-end driveways, which when you're dealing with large trucks pulling trailers or hauling heavy equipment, it's kind of challenging to maneuver in and out of this site because you've got that dead-end driveway. So essentially what we're trying to do is connect the 2 dead ends and complete the loop. It seems like that was probably contemplated in the original site design, and it was probably left out, in all honesty, because of the earthwork challenges in doing it. The grade that we're showing here does involve cuts of up to about 40 feet, which was one of your consulting engineer's concerns. As I mentioned, Mr. Suhaki actually is in this business. That's what he does every day. In the grand scheme of the projects that he works on, this is a relatively minor project. The reason we're trying to get this approved sooner rather than later is he's got some excess capacity with his personnel and equipment, which would allow him to actually complete this work in relatively short order in the coming month or so. So that's why we made efforts to get the application in a timely manner. You can see that we're proposing either reconstruction or new construction of about 500 feet of new paved driveway. The turning radii obviously would accommodate his heavy trucks and equipment, so they would accommodate fire apparatus or emergency vehicles that the town may have as well. We're proposing a fairly large stormwater retention basin at the back of the project. The entire disturbed area would sheet flow into that retention basin, and that's been sized to accommodate complete retention of a 100-year storm event from the contributing watershed, which we're assuming is mainly impervious surfaces. For the most part, this excavation is going to be in hard rock or ledge. We do anticipate that there will be drilling and blasting to complete this. It's basically a necessity. Back when this facility was originally developed, there were probably 15 or so test pits excavated up on this hill. Depths to ledge ranged anywhere from, I think, about 24 inches down to maybe 7 or 8 feet. Mr. Suhaki has excavated a couple of test holes up there on his own just to kind of know what he was getting into. He came up with average ledge depths around 4 feet in the area that we're proposing to do the work. So we do understand that most of this work will be rock excavation. It will have to be drilled and blasted. Mr. Suhaki will be, or is intending to crush the rock that comes out of there to get it in a form where he can actually haul it off the site. Generally just load shot rock into the back of a dump truck and haul it off. It's just not really feasible to do that. So he would be doing some crushing activities on the site to get that material in the state where he can haul it out of there and dispose of it elsewhere. It's a relatively simple project. In talking with Mr. Metcalf, his concerns were basically related to the fact that we do have those relatively large cuts in certain areas. He was concerned about the potential for groundwater and encountering that and the problems that may cause. I think in general, he was under the assumption that these would fall under your earth products excavation regulation and require an entirely separate special permit. And I think that's probably the first thing that I'd like to talk to with regard to his concerns. In looking at section 15.2 of your regulations, subsection 1 has specific exemptions where projects would not fall under the earth products regulation, and I believe that subsection 1 would apply to this project. This is a project which involves the alteration of a site development or a paved area. The original project for which it has been the recipient of a zoning permit from your staff. So I think it's pretty clear that this does not qualify as an earth product excavation. It is in fact a site development plan. And as mentioned earlier in my presentation, I think it also falls under that exemption because this is reasonably necessary for Mr. Suhaki to carry on his normal course of business on that site in a reasonable manner. The specific technical concerns with regard to it's a large cut, we don't disagree with that. There's probably 35 to 40,000 yards of material that will have to be exported from this site to accomplish this grading plan. But I think in looking up and down Hatchets Hill Road, which is the town's designated industrial area, I don't think that's unusual for any site development that would take place in that area. It's simply a function of the relatively rugged topography and the soil conditions that you have in that area. So I think it's probably also in keeping with what had to take place to originally develop this site. So naturally, any expansion or alteration of it would require a similar level of grading and effort. With regard to potential groundwater concerns, I mean, we're essentially taking a knob of ledge with shallow soil cover, and we're removing it to match the surrounding grades. There's essentially no surface watershed to this area. So I don't think there's any potential for groundwater to really be developed in that massive material that we're going to be removing. It's essentially taking the point off of the cone. If we look at the surrounding topography, we're still substantially higher than Hatchets Hill Road at our finished grade. There's no water that I can see that bleeds out of that hillside and causes problems on the road. Similarly, if you go on the easterly side of our project area, there's no evidence of groundwater bleeding out of the hillside there and causing any issues. So I think it's a relatively moot concern. We're well away from any wetland areas. We're outside of the regulated areas. So again, I don't think groundwater intrusion problems are really an issue here. The drilling and blasting that would take place would obviously fall under the purview of the fire marshal and will be regulated in accordance with all state and federal regulations. And typically it's the local fire marshal that would be reviewing blasting permits. So anything that has to take place with regard to that would be subject to their review and approval. I'm assuming there probably would be pre-blast surveys done. Typically that would be part of any blaster's due diligence anyway. There really isn't any development in the immediate area of what we're proposing to do here. So I don't think there's the potential for any damage or concerns with people's wells or anything like that, because we are pretty far removed from anybody else's developed site, with the exception of the applicant's own site. But in general, I mean, we acknowledge that this is a fair amount of earthwork to accomplish what the applicant is looking to do, but it is necessary for him to carry on his business in a reasonable manner. At the end of the day, it's a relatively simple grading project. So we would like to have the Commission's consideration of actually approving this project this evening, albeit maybe with conditions if you feel any conditions are appropriate. But we don't feel that there's really a lot of technical concern here that would really warrant carrying this over into another meeting. But we're certainly open to discussion, any questions that the Commission might have.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Go ahead, Jane.
Is there any modification to the statement of use when you put in this long driveway?
The statement of use would not really change. No, the use of the site would remain the same. This is just, as I mentioned, it's kind of a necessity because of the nature of his business. He continually has large trucks coming in. Typically they're carrying or they're hauling large trailers. So to be able to maneuver in and out of that site is extremely difficult with having the dead end driveway.
So there's not going to be trucks stacked up in there. It's not going to be like all lined up.
No, we're not trying to build a parking area or anything like that. We're just trying to make it so he can maneuver vehicles in and out of there.
It just seems such a long road for that purpose. I'm just trying to understand what makes there need to be so many feet of road extended in either directions, unless they're queuing up or something like that. Are they very long trailers?
I'm going to guess that the longest ones are probably 60 feet. I mean, nothing extremely unusual. It would be like the large low bed trailers that you would see going up and down the highway hauling heavy equipment.
Yeah. So I'm still sort of unsure as to why does it need to go out so far, make the turn and then come back in?
Well, in all honesty, part of it is a function of some of his future plans for the site, which you will be seeing hopefully in the coming months with uh, more involved site plans. And part of it is a function of he does need some space to park a couple of trucks there.
So that's why I'm asking you if there's a different statement of use, because generally we don't approve site modifications when they are in anticipation of a change in the use. We would do that at the same time.
Right, as I mentioned, at this point in time, there is no proposed change in use of the site. This is simply modifications to the site to make it more functional for the use that he has going on there now.
And what is that use right now that's going on up there?
So Mr. Suhaki, as I mentioned, runs a construction business. He does earthwork construction, heavy civil construction. So he has several large trucks. He has excavators and heavy equipment that they go in and out of this site on their way to or from jobs. And
We're pretty similar to our neighbor there, Pasqualini. No different than that.
So are there buildings on this site right now where these trucks and trailers will be parking in?
Yes, there's an existing office building with a small garage, a garage that we use.
So then trucks coming in and out of this under the current use are simply going to be parked?
There'll be trucks parked there overnight, yes.
And this is probably in anticipation of future site development of some sort?
Yes, but we haven't gotten that far yet where we're going in the future. This is just so I can conduct my day-to-day business right now. Right now, we're parked in North Stonington. We're working in North Haven, and we have to travel all the way from Stonington down to North Haven. We'll be parking in Old Lyme where our headquarters are, and then traveling down. It's a huge expense.
So this is sort of like your truck depot. The reason we're asking is that Mr. Pasqualini wasn't always on our good list because we didn't actually have a category of use for what it was that he wanted to do. So we're a little bit sensitive about
no, I can understand that. I mean,
activities out there.
Pretty much every neighbor around me is in this. We're all in the same use, and I'm anticipating on being in the same use. You got Kellogg who parks, I don't know how many trucks there. They're right next door to me. There's 30 trucks in there. I'm not going to park 30 trucks. I might have 5 or 6 at one time, but that'll be the most of it. And then you got the gentleman on top of the hill, the garbage guy, Anton or something like that. I'm trying to think of the gentleman, Fiddle Day, that owns that. He's got 20 trucks in there at one time. We're not going to have that many. We're looking to put 5 trucks with 5 trailers, a few excavators from time to time, you know, a couple pieces of equipment here and there. You know, it's going to be, I guess, kind of like a depot. It'll be, you know, when we're in between jobs, we need to bring stuff back for services, paint jobs, working on them, so on and so forth. Just like all the neighbors are on that same street.
Well, but my question is, was that in your statement of use? Is that in the statement of use currently for your property?
I believe it is.
Right, I guess we'd have to rely on Dan for that information. Okay, to actually do this project, how long will it take, and how many? So how many days is it going to take of both the blasting and the removal of this material? And how many yards of material are you actually anticipating removing?
So the actual yardage is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000 yards. I'll let Mr. Suhaki speak to the time frame on it.
You know, the time frame depends. We can't guarantee how fast the rock's going to break and the hardness of the rock. I mean, that has a little bit to do with it. I mean, if the rock goes like, and this is just a figure of speech, if it goes like paper, it goes real quick. You know, if the rock is a lighter rock, not a lot of hardness, we could have this project well underway by completed by probably next spring or next summer. But if the rock is hotter, it takes time. It takes time for the drillers. It takes time for us. It takes time to crush it, get it small enough to put in a truck. The hardness is the key.
So if you were thinking about how many, if 40,000 yards is going to be removed, so how many trucks would that be a day? And what kind of trucks are these that would be carrying this material out of the site?
They're the same trucks you have on there with all our neighbors right now. They're all the dump trucks, triaxle dump trucks.
Well, see, you know what it is, but I don't.
Oh, okay.
Hey, are they like 30-yard dumpsters or are they bigger than that?
No, they're similar to that. Exactly.
30-yard dumpsters.
Yep, exactly. But they're a dump truck. They're not a roll. That's considered a roll off. Those dumpster cans that attach. Yeah, it's very similar to those. And you might have one day you might have 10 trucks, and the next day you might have 20. Depending.
And you're saying for about a year?
Yes.
Every day?
That seems
No.
That seems long.
Not every day.
Okay.
I mean, in his defense, it is an industrial zone. It has truck traffic every day, and it's never gonna change. I mean, where else is he gonna go? That's an industrial zone that's gonna allow for this type of activity.
So just to give you an idea of
Is
order of
down to
magnitude,
4 miles.
to give you an idea on the order of magnitude, if we averaged it out over 5 days a week for a year, you'd be looking at about an average of 9 truck trips, or an average of 9 loads going out per day over the course of a year-long period with 5-day work weeks. So that would be about a truck trip an hour.
And when I sit in my office window and watch the truck traffic on that street alone, there's over 42 trucks a day that go by my window. All semis, big tractor trailers, like you said, 30-yarders, they all go by.
Okay.
I even think your triaxle might be smaller than your 30-yarder.
Yeah, right, on average, the trucks hauling out of here just to stay within legal weight limits, they'd probably be hauling on the average of about 16 yards in each load. So taking that 40,000 yards, dividing it by 16, you get that number of loads. Then you divide that by the number of days, and that's where you come up with an average of about 9 loads out of there each work day, if it were a year-long period.
And
the reason I'm asking these questions isn't so much that somebody developing their property wouldn't possibly have activity like this, but if it's leading up for this activity or something about very large trucks to be the activity on the site. Our industrial zone was a light industrial zone. It's not a heavy industrial zone. So I just want to make sure that what you're aiming for is something that is going to meet what we have permitted for the sites. And I know that you might say that your neighbors are doing this, that, or the other thing, but a lot of uses kind of migrate when the commissions aren't always aware of exactly what's going on. So
no, and that's but we also got to understand, as Dave brought to your attention, if you look at the grade on Hatchets Hill Road and you look at the grade at the top of that mountain, to do anything that you have to allow to be done on that site that fits into your LI 80 zone, anything that has to be done, that mountain has to be flattened out. I don't care if I'm going to put, just whatever's allowed in that zoning requirement that is unusable property right now at this time. So the least impact I can do to you, to the neighbors, myself, the area, the environment, is what we're really proposing right now.
Mm-hmm. And you say that there's no residences within any distance of you that would be impacted by the noise and the disruption.
No, they absolutely.
I made that statement,
95.
Jane. Michael.
Pardon?
I'm sorry?
Jane, I was the one that made that statement about not impacting.
I just don't know relative, if there are residences close by.
Well, I mean,
there is. I mean, the only residence might be, Jane, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, when the 95 tractor trailers
Yes,
hit
sir.
the rumble strip across from my office, adjacent to my office, that rumble strip is going to be louder than any blasting or crushers that are ever heard on that site.
I think in terms of residential development, the nearest residential development is probably on 4 Mile River Road. So that would be, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe 3,000 or 3,500 feet from where the
If
actual
I could
activity would be going on.
if I could interject, it's Dan, the land use coordinator. I just measured generally from their property on the GIS. It's about 1,200 feet to the nearest residence on 4 Mile River Road. But just to let you know, there is a kind of a hill between the two properties. So the property on 4 Mile River Road is on the downslope. There is a bit of a hill between the two properties. So that may deaden some of the noise, but it is roughly 1,200 feet or so.
What about the impact of blasting at a house 1,200 feet away?
So
And what about the other way on Hatchets Hill? What's the closest house going up from Pasqualini's property, going up towards on Hatchets Hill, Whitman Lane? Are those pretty far away?
That's thousands of feet.
Yeah, those are much farther away, Tammy.
So you
to the
wouldn't hear
south,
any
you're talking-
blasting from those, right? From those houses, would you hear it?
I would have to let Tim speak to that.
I'm going to tell you, to be honest with you, Tammy, it matters which way the wind's blowing.
Okay.
And, you know, they're not going to hear, they're not going to like, oh my God, what is that? They're not going to hear that. They might hear like your dishwasher starting up or something, like just a faint, you know what I mean? Or like a rumble, like a thunderstorm. It's different than that.
Part of the advantage that we have on this site with regard to the blasting is it's apparent that some rock removal was undertaken when they put in the initial driveway going up to the rear of the building. So they can essentially, and that's the grade that we're matching into, and then we're just providing a relatively gentle slope to the back for drainage purposes. So for the most part, we're going to be doing unconfined blasts rather than trying to like blast in a trench or a hole. So we're blasting off on a face, which requires a lot less blasting force. So that right there lessens the ground vibrations. It lessens how far out you can have an impact. And again, we're blasting essentially the peak of a hill. So that also reduces the amount of blasting force that they need to dislodge the ledge. So in general, this is a relatively low scale, I guess you could say, blasting effort, just because of those conditions.
Okay.
Well, it'll be
Just-
minimal impact of grounds because it's contained inside itself. It's not going to be like, you're not going to drive down Hatchet's Hill and say, oh my God, look what they're doing. You're not going to see, because all the blasting, all the drilling will be inside of itself. All the water will be contained inside of itself. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like, you're going to see like this massive, when you're coming down from, say, Pasqualini's heading towards, 4 Mile Road, you're not going to all of a sudden just see this massive blasting going on.
And while all this work is going on, just general hours of operation, I'd be interested in knowing not only, how long will the actual construction, day be? What about trucks? Will trucks be going in and out 24 hours a day, or when do they actually stop at the location for the day?
There will be no blasting before 8 a.m. Truck traffic now is 24 hours a day on that road. We will not be doing truck traffic pertaining to that blasting project other than from, say, 7 a.m. to, say, 3:34 p.m.
Monday through Friday?
What's the destination for the excavated material? Is that going to remain in Old Lyme or outside of Old Lyme?
It's probably going to go outside of Old Lyme. we're trying to find acceptable areas where people can use it right now to help cover some of the cost of the blasting.
So if it's probably going to go out line, that's not an out of old line, that's not an absolute. If it did stay in old line, where would it go? Where's the plan?
We don't have a home for it in Old Lyme, to be honest with you, right now.
Okay.
Well, how much
planning on getting? I'm sorry.
I was going to ask you a question about the dust and dust control related to the crusher operation.
No, we have to run water all the time just for our machines, because if our machines intake the dust, they ruins the engines, and we're heavy on dust control. It's not, you're not going to see any plumes of dust.
So Dan, do you happen to have the statement of use for this property?
I only have what's in the application there. My understanding in terms of the use that they're doing in the light industrial district is a truck terminal is allowed in the light industrial district.
Is that what they were approved for?
What was that?
Is that what they were approved for?
This business took over from another similar business that was there. And what had been practiced in Old Lyme when I arrived is the commission hasn't ever, to my knowledge, once something is approved, something of a similar scope and nature seems to have been able to move in Old Lyme. My past practice at my other towns were to have everything go to the commission, but that has not been the case in Old Lyme. So I have not been requiring things of a similar approved nature to come to the commission for a fresh approval. Retail to retail or office to retail in the commercial zone, that wouldn't have come. And since it was a similar use in the past, I did not require them to come to the commission to move in. Now, like when repairs are to be done, my understanding is that they're going to be coming in with a K7, ZBA and the commission for that portion of their application for this particular site. But the storage of trucks and equipment kind of follow along with the past use and from what I saw, allowed uses in the LI-80 district, which is in the truck terminal, as well as
it says truck terminals, warehouse, as long as both of those are outside the conservation zone, and I assume this, and also lumber and building materials yards. For some reason, I thought this was building materials yard when it was first approved. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm not certain. I could only go upon what use that was there prior. I do know it's not in the conservation though.
Yeah, but we do have a statement of use somewhere in a file, don't we?
We should.
For what?
For the original site plan that was approved.
From the past applicant?
Yeah, I mean, that.
Originally, the site was
I thought they submitted a statement of use as along with this project. What are you talking about from past approvals?
Yeah, what the site is actually approved for. Because that's what, either they're modifying that or they're saying the same. And to me, if they're modifying it, then they have to say they're modifying it when they come back with something like this. And it looks to me like this is in anticipation of something else.
So they're modifying I tell you that building and the driveway and everything is approved, and they're simply modifying that special permit approval for the site plan.
When this site was originally developed by, I don't remember the exact entity name, but I think it was Diebold and Company. They manufactured some kind of industrial hoses or fittings or something like that. And I believe they used this as their administrative offices and I think as a warehousing facility. So it probably was similar. They probably had their own delivery trucks or whatever parked there. And they used it for storage of the products that they were making.
Yeah, so my understanding of what the past use was prior to Mr. Sahaki was that this was used for testing and storage, testing of fire equipment and storage of trucks and equipment for that purpose to go out on other sites. So I felt the storage of equipment to go out for other sites was a one-to-one use almost. And I thought that was appropriate.
Well, I would appreciate it if we could look back to see, since we're going to be waiting for Tom anyway, just to look back to see what the current approved statement of use is and get an update to it if it needs to be updated as part of this application, because it looks to me like something new is going to be happening on the site, whether it's right now it's just to build a very long driveway, but it's for a purpose, and he's telling us what the purpose is. And I'm not saying it's not a use permitted in the zone, but when you get a special permit and you have a site plan in connection with a special permit, which this would have been, you can't just change the special permit conditions by saying, well, I want to do something different. So I just want to be sure. It looks to me like it's
Okay,
related.
I'll get that for you. It's just, I didn't think they were changing the use. Obviously, they're changing the approved site plan that was approved via that special permit, and that's all they're seeking to modify. So, that's on me. I'll look for that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think they were changing use so much as just simply modifying the approved site plan under the special permit.
Okay.
Dan, has our fire marshal seen this plan? And he will have to approve it.
No, he has not, and he'd have to approve the blasting certainly.
Right.
But I'm not sure if that's part of this process or not.
Okay. Maybe if you can pass this along, at least give him a heads up at this point as to what might be happening. And so to the rest of the members, we've got Tom Metcalf's letter here dated today. I think that we need to let Tom make a complete evaluation of the proposal. I'm not comfortable with any kind of approval with conditions of any kind because I wouldn't know what the conditions were. The other concern, probably not a concern, but when we were doing a lot of work with aquifers, Jane, do you remember if there's an aquifer in through this area or not, or was it just, is it superficial or?
We had a discussion about what kind. To me, there wasn't an aquifer here, but there was something else. Jane Cable talked about these, they're sort of areas that still hold water, but they're not necessarily an aquifer. And
right, they might be pools to feed or something, or
Mhm.
I remember something about this area, so I'm not sure whether Tom could answer that question or not, but my proposal to the commission is until we get Tom's take on this, and he does have some concerns, especially with the grading, the movement of materials and earth in the section 15. I would propose that we hold the public hearing open until next month, until we can get Tom's input on this. Any thoughts on that?
I concur on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Mark Diebold. I can fill in I'm the original landowner and developer of that building and site. I can answer some of the questions I've been hearing on the tape, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. To fill you in, I built it with the purpose of doing with my industrial hose business, as Mr. Held indicated. We did create the driveway. Todd Matchnick built that driveway to town road specs at great expense by me. But it was designed so that we could get daily deliveries and for shipping in and shipping out with 53-foot trailer semi trucks on an everyday basis, and additional freight companies delivering and picking up things from us and for us. So we did use trucks daily in our operation, and it was kind of Centerbrook Architects did the work, and McDonald Sharp Associates did the site work. So just to kind of clear that up, I don't remember ever having a specific site. I just remember getting the approval as having been LA 80. Jane, you were on the board back then, because this does go back 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's what we did, and just trying to clear up any questions you might have. But I don't remember having a specific state of use, but it was definitely because we were in the LA 80 zone. You know, a commercial, industrial business was appropriate for that site. So that's what I can add to your discussion for tonight. Unless you had a question for me, that's about all I can say.
No, I'm pretty sure Dan will be able to find it.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's it. But thank you for letting me share that with you. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thibault. So, Commission, any other questions for right now? So then I would propose that we wait for Tom's complete evaluation of this before we move forward with any kind of decision or conditional decision. Is that acceptable?
That's agreeable.
That is.
Yes.
Okay. All right, then I will take a motion that we continue the public hearing for this item until the April meeting.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
In favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion passes. We will continue the public hearing for this item at next month's meeting. That's the April meeting of the Zoning Commission.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
Tammy came in, I think, like 2 minutes into that last public hearing. Did you want to reseat her for one of the alternates now, or did you want to just? I mean, we don't have much more to vote on of importance, but I didn't know if you wanted to seat her back into the commission.
Sure, we can reseat her back.
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks, but all right. Tammy is now.
Maria or Katie?
Katie.
We're gonna. Katie. Maria's gonna stay on.
Okay.
No, sorry, I was late.
I don't know, Maria. Were you like saying I want to go?
Fine.
Okay. All right, moving into the regular meeting. Item 1 is tied to the public hearing, so we'll move on to item 2. A special permit to construct additions onto an existing 4-bedroom, 2.5-story year-round dwelling, removal of existing non-conforming detached garage, construct a new pool house and in-ground pool, install new P-stone driveway, and other associated improvements. Variances were granted since the proposed lot coverage 12.2% exceeds the 10% allowed for construction or expansion of building structures within 50 feet and 100 feet of the Lieutenant River, which is a tributary of the Connecticut River, the Gateway Conservation Zone, on property located at 15 Academy Lane, Grant and Margaret, Cambridge applicants. This will be to receive and set a public hearing. I will take a motion that we receive and set the public hearing for the April meeting.
So
Have a
moved.
motion?
So moved.
Jane Marsh, motion second.
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 Second, Alan Todd, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay, agenda item 2 of this regular meeting will be moved, the public hearing for this item, April Zoning Commission meeting 2021. Item 3, special permit to construct, special permit to permit construction of a 16 by 17 foot 2-story addition on the south side. Floor family room plus second floor bedroom. second floor bedroom 5 expansion with 2 feet 6 by 20 feet plus or minus west side infill to restore architectural design integrity to roof line on property located at 44 Hatchets Point Road, EHW LLC, care of Henry Elstner, Elsesser applicant. Receive and set the public hearing. I will take a motion that we receive and set this public hearing for the April 2021 meeting of the Old Lyme Zoning Commission. Motion,
So moved.
Maria,
Yes.
second.
Second,
Who gave me a second? I'm sorry.
I did.
Jane.
Jane,
Jane, okay. All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. A motion for item 3 in the April meeting. Item 4, special permit to permit construction of a truck service building for transportation and logistics business. The facility will be used only for service and maintenance owned vehicles on property located at Hatchet Road, Transportation.
Oops.
This is, again, to receive and set a public hearing. I'm going to go off here on this one. Do we,
Hey, John, can you
May?
stay muted? We're getting a lot of feedback on you. John Bennett?
I'm sorry, I'm on mute for the moment.
okay. Dan, is there going to be enough time to address this in the April meeting, or should we move it to May?
Both these applicants, we should be able to do that. 2 and 3
All
should be
three?
shorter. It's really 1 and 4 that would be normal applications.
Right, so we have the public hearing to continue on Hatchet's Hill, plus the opening of this one. That looks like a mighty agenda.
You're drinking coffee.
Yeah,
Oh, we can do it. Come on. Don't
Okay.
make me.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah, like, I don't know, it's up to you, but I don't think that's a terrible amount based on some of the meetings I've been going through lately with ZBA and wetlands. But
Okay.
it's really up to you.
no, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
We can always address it if it gets out of hand next month. Okay, so
Yeah,
I
I
will
mean, if we
take,
need to cut that back on another item like regulation change or something like that, we certainly can do that.
okay. All right, so I'll take a motion for, I'll make a motion for item 4 for 38 Hatchet's Hill Road, set and receive a public hearing. Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Tammy, second.
Second,
Maria?
Yep.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Wow, another one. Okay. Item 5. Special permit to construct 3 10,500 square feet commercial buildings for the purpose of renting units for business service establishments and storage on property located at 250 Shore Road, CNS Realty LLC applicant. Receive and set a public hearing. This one, I'm going to say, let's do this in May.
yep,
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll take a motion that we receive and set the public hearing for the 250 Shore Road special permit application, the May zoning meeting. Motion?
So move.
And Maria?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed and abstaining. Okay, item 5 for the May public hearing, for the May zoning commission meeting. Okay, new business. Our first order of new business
Can
is,
I make a comment to
go ahead,
Dan?
Jane. Go ahead.
You put these special permit things down on our meeting agenda. Can you put the sections that they're applying under? So that if we wanted to actually look up in our books, the sections that these people are applying under, we could?
Like the use they're applying under, or?
Well, it's a special permit application under some section of our regulations. Could you just add that when they come in?
Okay.
Okay, because then it allows us to zero in on what we have to look at.
Okay. Edie, welcome.
Thank you for having me. So I don't have anything visual to present, but I believe most of you had seen the presentation we did back in the summer of 2019 that talked about the Halls Road Improvements Committee's concept plans. They were really just a vision that to get people thinking about something different. They weren't really in stone. We have since secured the BSC to be doing a master plan for us. They started in the fall of 2020. And within their master plan, they are planning to provide us with 3 phases. The first phase has been completed, it's existing conditions. And they have been connected with the DOT. They've done a market study. And then the master plan will be an actual drawing that shows what their recommendations are that would include sidewalks and the whole connectivity needs of the road. And the final piece will be their planners will start the rezoning language to provide for mixed use. Some of the things they found in the existing conditions, they did look into what was the septic and infrastructure possibilities for the site, because there was a lot of questions about that from various towns members concerned that it was an impossible project. And it's actually a lot of the conditions that can be addressed have been solved by alternative type of septic systems, which was good to find out about. They've also talked with the DOT. The DOT has now upped the amount of money that they offer for connectivity projects through grants. And they also recognize the need for not just roadways to go as fast as possible, which is the typical DOT expectation. They're now recognizing things like connectivity. So a complete street where you have sidewalks and crosswalks and bike paths within a town center. We have been working closely with the folks at the BSC. They also did the project at Soundview, so they're a well-known group in the town. They are working in connection with providing actual drawings for master plan. They're also working with their planning folks to work out an overlay district for mixed use. The market study pretty much described that office and retail are expected to go to a 20% vacancy as the rents come up for renewals. Especially from COVID, there's more and more stress on retail businesses. But they did say that residential is one of the few things that's really growing because of COVID. Many people are moving out of cities and moving out to the countryside. And there's also a good, obvious need that we have seen through planning and through many different conversations in town for a more diverse type of housing option in town. Typically, almost all the housing in town is a one-family unit. And so they're recommending that we consider more mixed use and cluster housing that would allow for different types of more diverse housing than what we have today. So with that, I think, you know, we can certainly have BSC start pulling together the zoning language for this new overlay district. But my question to the zoning commission is, how do we interact with you guys? How do we get your feedback of what you think is on target, what isn't on target? How do we work together to make sure that we build something that's useful and not a waste of time? So I'll leave it up to you guys to help me on that.
Well, I think the last time that when they came to make the presentation, I think there was a lot of input from the commission at that point. Not all favorable, but I think that's how you do. You get put yourself put on the agenda for both preliminary conversations so that various plans and ideas can be introduced, and then after listening, then you come back with either final plans, recommendations for zone regulation changes and things like that.
Okay.
We would probably look at and just see some of the plans, you know, kind of piggybacking on what Jane said, just to understand. And we talked about this before. We talked about the mixed use. We talked about the possibility of zoning regulations to be expanded or changed to say a village district or something of that nature. But as Jane said, it's kind of like, let's see a concept first of what may be coming.
Yep.
And as that plan begins to solidify.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think earlier on we had tried to sort of set up some kind of a zoning subcommittee at HRIC, and is that still something that someone from zoning should be on, or is that something we would do on our own?
We could have a rep kind of attend the meetings when they were, I'm not saying every meeting, but when the meeting would begin to see that plan start coming together. However, that's simply as an advisor. It would not be to advise at that meeting to prevent a conflict of interest or what might appear to be a conflict of interest, but certainly to kind of data mine, to data gather and bring that back to the commission so we could kind of start looking at possibilities on our own before we get together. But yes, we could have someone kind of be an advisor for key meetings. Okay.
Yep. Yep. I mean, our main goal is to not waste everyone's time. You know.
Right.
I mean, we want to have some real information from the BSC to be able to start driving this forward, but we don't want to do, you know, back and forth a million meetings. I mean, it's just a matter of having real conversations that can help us get where we're trying to get to. And then it certainly would be great to have someone on board that would at least be there to hear what's going on and talk within your group about what they're seeing here. So with us, so, you know, we want to keep the conversation open between all of us. So that's our main goal.
And I think at that first couple of meetings, it was Maria and maybe Michael Barnes were the two of you that kind of sat in as a fly on the wall.
I know.
We could have Ed, Maria.
No, I know. I was at the meeting with Edie.
Okay.
I don't remember who else was on with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was me.
It was
okay,
you. With such great enthusiasm, Mr. Barnes, as well. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to come off like that.
So, yeah, Edie, if you stay in touch or whatever, and kind of let us know, you can let me know that something might be coming up, or there might be some sharing with the, BSC might be willing to, or might be sharing something at a particular meeting. then I'm
Mhm.
sure Maria would step up or someone. But again,
Okay.
just to be clear, simply to listen, not advise, and not provide any input.
Okay.
It's just simply as a data gatherer, if you will.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
How
Yeah,
are
and
the
I mean,
citizens of town having their input?
how are they having their input?
Yeah,
We certainly have had the selectmen coming to some of our meetings. We have various people that are connected in other commissions that are in the committee. And you know, we have so far had the BSC come to the last 3 meetings since they started the master plan work. Coming up, we're going to skip it for this month because they're busy trying to get the master plan under control and recognizing what they're doing. So they're doing more design work right now than they have to show. So we don't want to waste their time with that. But I have been talking. I talk with them quite often and urge them to start the planning process with their zoning folks so that we don't, you know, get a master plan and then have to start at zero to get the planning part into it as well, because I think it's, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in town that, you know, we're trying to protect Halls Road from future development that looks like we have today. And we want to see things going in a better direction than what we have now. So that's, you know, the setbacks of 60 feet is something that we want to see possibly change.
so what I meant was though, the great unwashed public, you know, the people who are, you know, the 300 people that showed up for the elderly housing project. I mean, that though people have to be considered like that, and they, you know, we listen to that. That's what we do when
Sure.
when it comes time. So to me, that if you really want to be sure that there won't be another 300 people showing up to say they don't like it, that somehow there's got to be a way to have that input earlier in the planning process.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, back in 2019, we had 2 open houses for showing these proposals, which was actually very productive because people were able to talk to our committee one-on-one and ask the questions they wanted to ask. We found that having great big public meetings, you pretty much get all the folks who are against something that show up and very few positive feedbacks from it. But we are trying to keep a information coming, what am I looking for? A correspondence to tell people what we're up to. We haven't had a lot to show other than describing that we did get a master plan approved and that we're working on it. And I think as we go forward, especially when the master plan actually can take shape, that's when we need to find new ways to produce that for the public to see. So we're trying to get, we had someone that was really great in marketing and helping us send out updates, but she's no longer in the committee. So we're trying to find more folks to help us get that information out there. You know, we're publishing what we can in Limeline and trying to get feedback from people. I know that the EDC has also been working closely with us, and I'm also on that committee. And they recently, both the EDC and the HRIC, worked with planning to make sure that they got the latest results from all of the surveys that Advanced CT did. And we're going to have some boards and commissions, and hopefully you guys will attend to get our final findings, which we were trying to do last year, but because of COVID, we kind of dropped off the map on that list. But so we want to make sure that everybody does know what's going on, and we're aiming to keep that going. It's definitely a key part of this whole thing. We just don't want to turn it into the affordable housing debacle. So,
I have a question.
Really,
What is the current property owner who owns the majority of that street? What's his take on this? As far as like, does he have any plans to Are you guys including them, or are they part of the discussion?
Current property owners?
Yeah, because I mean, one property owner owns probably 75% of the street, and on the other side, like, what are these people saying as far as what about
We
your
have
plan?
talked with a lot of folks that, Matt Prosser is the owner of the largest section of the southern part of Halls Road. And we've actually been talking lately with the people that own the property the Hideaway is on about their signage program. There's been a lot of issues about all those A-frames that are basically illegal. And we've shown them our presentation directly. So those are the two biggest property owners. And
What would be his feedback? I mean, what would be the feedback from the grocery store guy?
Okay, so the shopping center guy, basically, Matt Prosser, that owns where the Big Y is, he's not in any big hurry to do any new development. His latest focus has been on residential. And when we talked to him a little bit further, and he recognized that if he was to do any improvements on the property, if he could do residential, that would certainly be a better investment for him than doing retail, because he's not that interested in doing retail, as most developers are not interested in retail, because it's not prospering right now.
Yeah, it's dead for sure.
So, and the same thing when we did talk last year, I believe it was, with the folks that own the Old Lyme Shopping Center where the Hideaway is, their first question is, "Oh, is the town going to put in a septic system for us?" We're like, "No, we're not doing that." But I think that there's some folks that one person that was going to join our committee decided not to, because he's very interested in doing a development on Halls Road. Now, where that is, I don't know. I know he first was looking at where the property next to Essex Savings was, but he wanted to do residential, which is not zoned for residential. So he pulled out of that. So far, most of the people that we've talked to that are interested in development are more interested in residential. And that's, again, another reason that for a town center to prosper, setting it up with mixed use is more likely outcome, especially right now with the level of residential versus retail and commercial.
So Edie, is the plan for you to go back to the owners of the property once you have the draft of the master plan from the BSC group and have a more recent conversation with them on what the possibilities are?
I think we definitely need to do that. And we also, the main reason for the master plan is not that we're going to insist people start changing anything that have private property. It's more to allow them to have permission to do something different than what they have today, and give them the opportunity, and also protect the town from looking like a strip center. We're aiming to try and make it have more to do with the original character of Old Lyme. So the master plan is not going to say you have to go build this. The only thing the town really will be doing in relation to that will be the sidewalks and lighting, public access along the right of way. So that's really the only thing the town will be responsible for, but it'll be the first thing that could come out of the master plan, because now we'll have something to apply for with grants. And so there's a lot of little pieces to this whole picture. It's not just this is going to do that, but it definitely, once we have a master plan, we can go to the property owners, and once we have zoning heading in the right direction, we can go to the property owners and say, look, you can now do this, and if you're interested, here you go. And also, I believe that BSC is going to provide us with any connections with grant proposal things to work on, and maybe we can get a grant writer into our group. So, we keep trying to pull in some more interested folks into our committee too. So if you guys know anybody, let us know.
Okay. Is BSC working towards any particular type of concept quite, as an example, a village concept. I mean, some housing, maybe a small Hartford Healthcare, or some kind of a facility with medical need, some medical needs being met there. Maybe supporting shops that would support an everyday type. Well, what I'm particularly thinking of is with more work from home that is here to stay. I think that's pretty much an established fact. With people working out of their homes or apartments, they would be looking for things to support them in their everyday needs being close. So a village concept, to have a small little town within a village. Are they addressing anything like that?
Well, they're going as far as they can with that. They're going to be providing design guidelines so that we can have recommendations of, not so strict that a developer can't do anything without following to the letter, but enough to give us the right look and feel of something. It's definitely trying to aim for a village district that would provide residential townhouses, not just mixed use, not just an apartment above a store kind of thing.
Right.
Clearly with this environment, service-oriented services are going to be the most productive for any kind of retail or office. So to your point, medical offices are something you can't do online, so, well, some of it you can, but yeah, and the more service-oriented retail is more likely to continue on, and there might be some new folks, younger folks that are willing to take some chances as we come out of the COVID world.
Right.
So yes, they're not going to design a town for us. I think an architecture firm might have gotten closer to that, but folks really wanted to work with BSC, which isn't really an engineering firm. They do have a landscape component to them. So they are going to make recommendations about setbacks, about density, about heights. And that would all be something that gets put into the new zoning. And that would be what would help us to build this village district type of setting that, the idea of pulling buildings closer up to Halls Road as things get redeveloped makes much more of a community feeling where you can cross a street and you're not walking through a parking lot to get to a store. And, much like Madison or even Niantic Village right now, those are good examples of things that are much more walkable, much more mixed use with people living and working in the same areas. So that's what we're aiming for. But
I would
they're not
think
going to
that would
design the actual structure.
Right. I would think that kind of a concept might be a lot more palatable to the owners, to the property owners at this point, to invest in, rather than keeping things the same, but then saying, well, okay, we'll just have mixed use.
Yes.
Just a thought, just trying to think that
that's
moving the thought curve to the next level, not just moving it up, but moving it to the next level.
Yes.
Okay.
I think honestly, I envision that the north side of Halls Road will be more likely to get redeveloped before the south side, until things start to die off on the south side. I think you're going to see smaller parcels that can be bought up and renovated and changed, or actually torn down and rebuilt in a new way. So, but definitely we want to see opportunities for developers, and they're not going to look at a commercial only zone and have any interest. So that's another reason why, having a set of townhouses or somewhere for people to downsize to is really, we've heard loud and clear throughout the town that that's what people need in town, and they wish they could live in the town and have somewhere to walk to get their coffee and do their mailing and get their salon and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. Duh. Yeah, right. And also places for younger people to live, because honestly, if we don't make it affordable for people to live around here that are younger and want to have their kids in school here, we got an old population that just keeps getting older, so We need some
I've
young
noticed
blood
that,
here.
yeah.
You
Mhm.
know? So,
All right, if no one has any more questions for Edie?
Nope.
Okay,
okay,
thank you
very
so much,
for the
Edie.
time.
Thank you.
Okay,
Really
take care.
appreciate it.
Yep,
Take care.
okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Let's move on to the second item of new business. Regulation changes. And you have made available some things for us to look at. Have you?
Yeah, and I just wanted to see if this might make sense for everybody, just because the schedule seems to be getting a little busier for you guys in terms of commercial applications. And I know you don't want to have incredibly long meetings either. So I didn't know if it would make sense to maybe break the list up I gave you a little bit into maybe some of the lower hanging fruit first, and then some of the more in-depth things, you know, as we move along.
Right.
In terms of, you know, I guess the 4 or so lower hanging fruit things I would think would be 1, the mechanicals, 2, I guess this isn't as low hanging, but I'd like to move construction storage along a little quicker if possible. The 4, the legal notices. 6, the voluntary demolition. I think those are pretty simple, as long as I get clearance on that from the town attorney. You know, 913 might be a simpler one. It really depends on how our conversation goes on Wednesday. But in terms of like height limit, accessory apartments, the electric vehicle stuff, which I'm trying to get some more information to you guys now, and even the residential zone change in number 9 that's new along 156 between Mile Creek and 4 Mile River Road. That might be something that might take a little more time.
I agree.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to go through everything with you guys tonight. If you want to just do some of the easier ones and save some of the more lengthy stuff, you know, for later meetings, that's also fine. It's really up to whatever your discretion is.
Yeah, well, my thought is if we're going to make any progress, let's address the low-hanging fruit to get some change in those areas. My concern is, you know, things that could possibly help Mark, our building inspector, and maybe the mechanicals.
Okay. Yeah, and the one other one I didn't include in there was the, and I'll have to add this number that might be a little easier, was when we require zoning permits. The discussion of, you know, somebody's building a roof, do they really need a zoning permit unless, you know, even if they're in the flood zone, I wouldn't consider necessarily a roof a substantial improvement. I mean, nobody's really putting on a roof unless they need it as a repair. So just a couple things like that we could add on there. But if you want, I can start with one and we can go through, you know, a couple of these tonight, just so we can go, you know, see what you think, and then, you know, we don't have to stay here all night talking about stuff. But I guess with one,
There may also be another option as well. I mean, we can certainly go through a couple of these tonight, but if it makes sense at some point that knowing what we have coming up in April meeting and we were already scheduling in May, does it make sense to set aside an hour or something as a special meeting and just focus on, you know, 1 or 2 of these? So I think that may be also another option, or else, you know, our meetings are going to be till 10 o'clock.
it's really whatever availability you guys want to have. If you wanted to have a special meeting just to discuss some of these regulations, I'm certainly open to that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so let's see how this goes, and then we'll decide at the end of the meeting on special ones if we need to. All right?
Okay. Well, yeah. Let me discuss. I'll try discussing some of the easier ones now, and we'll see how far we get. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Before we start, can everybody who's not talking mute a microphone, because it's like mad feedback?
You might have, Matt, you might have a lot of feedback because you have your computer and your phone going. Is that true?
We only have one audio going. It's just like, you can see like the names that are popping up when the noise is in the background. It's like the speakers are playing it back through when it's coming out if their mic's not on, turned off. I actually only have one audio.
So I guess my only suggestion is we mute, we just mute ourselves when we're not speaking.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at.
Okay. All right. So is that a little better now?
Definitely.
What was that?
Yeah, good to go. All right. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Okay. So 763. So for this one, what I did was I included the current regulation, and then I haven't gone all the way through with Matt, but this was just in my mind kind of an easier way to parse this out. Just break up the different entities into their own little subsection, and kind of break it down for you guys so a little easier, so you can address each item as you think is necessary, and then I can take it over to Matt and see if this format works or if we should do something differently. So 763, I wasn't looking to do anything with the current kind of exemption we have for above ground propane tanks, 30 inches in diameter. I thought that was fine if we kept that the same. You can keep it alongside the house or rear of your house in the setback. So I made no change to that unless you think it was necessary. One thing that wasn't addressed is currently underground buried propane tanks have to meet setbacks. The fill nozzle, the little dome that kind of comes up out of your yard, we currently make you meet setbacks. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on whether that should be reduced or not. Building does have certain sway in this matter, and by sway I mean they have official rules. I shouldn't say sway, that they do have. So often, an underground propane tank, I believe 500 gallons or bigger or 1,000 gallons or bigger, has to be 10 feet away from the property line per building code. So I didn't know if you wanted to leave that as is with the underground propane tanks in terms of the fill nozzle and everything meeting setbacks, or if stay in the R80 zone where there's a 35-foot setback, you would want to reduce that 50% so they could put it a little closer to the property line. It's really what you guys envision is best for the town on that one.
So these are
that's
going to be wide?
Jane, go ahead.
What
We
was
missed
that?
that.
These regulations are going to be town-wide?
They could be town-wide or site-specific, zone-specific.
Because isn't it mostly in the R10 zone where these are causing the issue?
Correct, but I figured I would go through the whole thing anyways. Honestly, people always want to put their underground propane tanks a little further away than necessary. If you want to keep underground propane tanks as is, I'm fine with that.
Well, I mean, I don't want them to be too close to the property line, because then somebody makes a mistake because they don't know they're even there. People aren't always sure of where their property lines are. But it would seem like we wouldn't want them to be moved that close to the boundary line if there was no reason for it. And for bigger properties, there's really no reason for it to be outside or inside the setback, is there? But in the R10 zone and maybe the R20 zone, it could get to the point of being a little tight.
Sure. I'm happy to go with whatever direction you want to go. If you thought the R10, R15, or R20 are the most appropriate, maybe for a reduction in those setbacks, that's certainly plausible. I believe in most circumstances, though, it'll never get closer than 10 feet from the property line per building code.
So then it wouldn't really do much relief in the R10 zone at all.
In the R10, correct. Yeah, that's why I didn't know if you thought in a different zone. So maybe this would just apply in the R15 and the R20.
Are people having difficulty in the R15 and R20?
Well, there are requests to put things closer in the setback in R15 and R20. And it's mostly in the case with non-conforming lots with a non-conforming house on it. There are a few instances in kind of the Lime Street area, excuse me, where there are smaller lots with that are tighter that people have requested something like this. I had a lengthy, I won't call it dispute, but a homeowner had a disagreement with me in terms of increasing tank size in the R15. It wasn't an underground tank in this instance; it was an above ground tank, but it was a similar situation.
So what's the side yard in an R15?
I think it's 15. Let me double check. Yeah, it's 15 in the R15 and 20 in the R20. Oddly enough.
So would the commission members feel like reducing that down to 10 would be okay?
Absolutely. I don't think we could reduce it any less than 10 based on building
I'm just
code.
asking my fellow commission members, say in those two zones that we allowed them to be as close as 10 feet away. So that would give them some relief.
Some, but there's still no change to the distance from the house. Is that correct? That still has to stay?
Well, there's certain building codes that they have to meet in terms of distance from the property line.
So
yeah,
that stays. So that stays, but if it's still within, if they can then squeeze it in, which they can't do right now, then 10 feet from the property line is where the tank could start. Provided that with the installation of the tank, they're still 10 feet away from the house or whatever the requirement is in the building code.
Yeah, so basically they always have to meet both. You know, we're not looking at it as one other ever. They have to meet zoning for certain circumstances, and they have to meet building code in terms of, they always have to meet building code regardless of what zoning says, and vice versa. So that was part of the frustration for the homeowner on Library Lane, is they didn't understand why, if they met building code, why zoning wouldn't institute a setback. And I had to explain that that's what the people of the old line wanted. I didn't make any of this stuff up. It was the will of the people, which confuses people sometimes. But I think if we reduce that to 10 feet, that would help, some residents in terms of where they'd like to place it.
And then the R20 similarly could go to 15 feet.
Well, just to keep things simple, and I think this is Jane was thinking, maybe in the R10, R15, R20 zones, we just make the setback 10 feet for those three zones, and then have normal setbacks for the larger yards where people have more room.
Okay.
But for R10, they're not going to see much relief.
It would only be 2 feet, but honestly,
I don't even see how you could put an underground tank in an R10.
Oh yes, Paul. Oh yes.
Really?
Surprise. 2 feet, honestly, 2 feet could help. I do know one situation where 2 feet honestly would prevent somebody from going to get a variance in this case.
Okay.
Yes. So where I struggle is, kind of scale of the issues. So, I hear, there was one debate, there was one dispute, there was onesie twosies, and we're changing regs based on onesie twosies. And I'm curious on, again, data to support changing a reg. So that's where kind of I get a little stuck. I mean, it makes sense to me that it's uniform between 15, 10, and 20, between R15, R10, and R20. That whatever we decide, that there's consistency. But again, I'm like, are we doing this for onesie twosies, or is this a real need that's come up that we have to address and change a reg for?
So if we look at changing some of the mechanicals, Maria, generators, automatic emergency setback generators, okay, are in this area is going to be propane.
Yeah.
So that's going to kind of work hand in hand. And I
Okay.
think that the increase, you know, if we allow the increase in the automatic backup generators is going to require a propane tank. So that means that if we open up the mechanicals, then now we have to have a variance for the tank because the tank won't fit. I'm just trying to pull this
Yeah.
together.
No, I'm trying to just get a good understanding. And in our last conversation, we talked about pulling out generators. So if we're putting generators back in, we're now.
I would like to talk about that.
Okay.
I would like, you know, as a commission, we've got to talk about that because there's a lot of them going in, and I know, you know, I'm very confused because Jane, you indicated that you hear generators running, but an automatic emergency backup generator should not be, with the exception of a 20 to 30 minute period once a week for exercise. But that's it. I mean, to run a generator instead of line electricity is like, it's super expensive. You know, it far out.
I think it has something to do with the fact that the people aren't there. So,
but they shouldn't kick in. An automatic should not kick in until line power is lost because it's wired into the entire wiring system of the house.
What seemed to happen is they all kicked in because line power is lost a lot down in where I live. I'm telling you, it's not just occasional. It's an awful lot. And even if it's short periods of time, hours, or, you know, half a day or whatever, it's lost a lot. And what seemed to be happening is that although they were all turned on, the mechanism for turning them back off, when people weren't there, those failed in some way. So we were just listening
and they shouldn't, and that's a failure of one of the components in the system.
There's a lot of shouldn'ts in this world. It was.
I know. Now portable generators is a different story. If somebody doesn't shut that off, and I have experienced that even down here. I'm in your kind of area. Like, power comes back on, and their generators continue to run. I mean, they're not shutting them off. But an automatic, once it senses line power back on, should shut down within a minute of power restoration.
Just basically this idea of power generation in addition to your house power generation is very noisy. So to me, it's something that if you were living right next to it, it's like the guy who said the work site next to his house. It's just not fair for people who are very, very close. And, you know, these power generation has only recently been acquired by absolutely everyone. It was not something that people did. So now it's an item that's moving from being, you know, Jane Marsh doesn't have any power generation. So Jane Marsh just sits around and waits for the power to come back on. And, but I can see that other people who want to spend the money and who just believe that they can't stand not to watch their television or whatever, have to have these rather large power generation stations. And so it's a change in times maybe, and I'm an old fart, excuse me. But I just think I feel bad for the person who's got one of those things right up next to where they're living. So someone else just thinks it's a necessity. Yeah.
But is there something where, you know, because of noise level, there has to be like a certain decibel level, you know, that becomes unacceptable, you know, at a certain point in the town.
Well, and it's basically the whine of all of them, you know, it becomes a collective thing that they're all on, and one of them maybe for a little short time wouldn't be a big deal, but have them all go on and have them saturating a neighborhood where people are living very close to one another. You know, it's not actually for me personally. I hear them all, but they're from quite a distance. But I can imagine if they're somewhat annoying as far away as I am, what it must be like to live right next door to one. And so it's just something that if they didn't make so much noise, I wouldn't have so much comments about them.
The decibel level in the automatic setback is extremely low. It's almost a deep hum compared to a portable generator, which will rattle your bones.
Right.
Have 2 or 3 of those running in a neighborhood, and it's offensive, but it's an emergency situation. So you kind of like just bite the bullet on it and just let it go. But automatic setbacks are extremely, at least in my estimation, my non-engineered, my ears, it's more of a deep hum. They're extremely well insulated.
Would it help the commission on this particular question? Sorry, Jen, I don't want to interrupt you.
Right. I'm willing to be educated, but because I don't know, I'm not going to go around house to house to see what all each people have. But some of them have some enormous pieces of equipment. They're very large out there.
Would the commission want me to talk to the building official about, what the decibel level is on some of these generators and just get you a range? Because basically what we've approved is like kilowatts, the smallest, and I think the biggest ones we've been approving, which are very, very large, are 24 kilowatts. I could try to get some decibel information on some different models like Generacs and stuff like that, just to give you guys some information on how loud that is.
That would be great, and if we can get a comparison to a $10,000 to $15,000 portable, a 10 to 15 kilowatt portable.
And is there a way then that once we look at what those decibel levels are, since you need a permit, to, connect all of these, that there's certain requirements we have, and beyond that, it's just not allowed, especially in like an R10 area where the homes are closer together.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, that if we look at the R10 area specifically, there probably has to be a kilowatt hour max. And we can probably only see that through a chart comparison with kilowatt generation kilowatt generation compared to decibel level. And you don't need a monster for a lot of the homes in the R10.
Absolutely.
You just need something to keep emergency power, whether it's for medical reasons or, just staying connected. If the power's out, most likely cable's going to be out as well. So the best you can do is communicate with a tower if you're, within distance on that. But as far as refrigeration and medical is primary, but
I would think so.
But yeah, maybe some comparisons of that, and then we look at just an R10.
Okay. Yeah,
Dan.
Who?
Sorry, this is Katie. I just wanted to make sure I had this understood from last meeting. You said that most of these, so for the generators, you put this together because of the amount of applications you received for requesting them, right? So there is what it seems like a need for this regulation based on what the town folk are submitting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say generators is the #1 permit we've been issuing right now since the storm in August or whatever it was. So yeah, we must have issued at least 100 generator permits, if not more. And there's probably, I know one gentleman submitted a letter on a generator. He will probably have to go seek a variance. Depending on the outcome of what the commission decides in terms of reductions. I guess one observation I have is I'm not sure, we haven't got, I don't think a generator as a variance yet, but if somebody came in for a generator variance, I'd be surprised if their reasoning was obviously to for any sort of medical reason or anything like that if they would be denied. Just based on the nature of what they're requesting. But okay, what I'll do is I will come up with those numbers and we'll keep plugging along just so I'm not wasting your time. So we didn't specifically discuss above ground oil tanks. I had that as a hypothetical 764. I don't think this is a similar situation per se as the other ones. Often oil tanks could simply go into your house, and with potential leakage from oil tanks, I don't necessarily think it would be wise to, move those any closer to anybody's property line than what would be allowed now. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that?
I agree.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right. That's what I kind of figured that might be an easier one. Moving on. So I put air conditioning and heat pumps together because they're very similar compression function and noise level. And some of the mini splits actually are both, but I think they're both comparable in terms of what they do. So, I really left it wide open as to what sort of, I know, I think it would be easiest to have it be a percentage of the whatever the current setback is in terms of reduction, and then I left it wide open in terms of what zones. I think based on even the other conversations we've had, you guys probably would want to restrict this to the R10, R15, R20 zone, where it's, I don't have many non-conforming lots that would have a problem like this in the R40 or R80. It's really in those three zones that I've had to send people for variances, and where it gets a little tricky in terms of citing them.
So why the 50% number? Again, I'm going to ask, based on what's been approved, let's say, for example, within the R10, R15, R20 zones, what's been that number? And does that equate to a 50% change? Do we have
Okay,
that?
so I kind of chose 50% as a minimum of what I thought would be useful in terms of the reduction, in terms of how close people's houses are to the property lines. Now, the building official in his memo suggested no setbacks. Now, just to reiterate, like the town of Old Saybrook, they have no setbacks for any mechanicals whatsoever. The town of Clinton, when I was filling in there two and a half years ago, they just moved mechanicals into having to meet setbacks, and it was a bear to try to do it. And since then, they've subsequently removed mechanicals entirely from having to meet setbacks. So in those towns, there is no setback for an AC condenser or a heat pump. You can put that 1 foot from the property line. Honestly, we've had variances the last 2 meetings for mini splits. But I thought 6 feet was the minimum amount that would, enact meaningful change and actually help people. I know one gentleman had submitted a letter where he asked for 75%, because that was going to help in his particular instance. But to provide any meaningful relief in this, it would need to be, going from 12 to 6 feet, or 10 to 15 to 7.5, or 20 to 10. Just based on the non-conforming lots. Now, if you wanted to make it, 5 or 6 feet for those 3 zones, that would certainly make it easier. But I wanted to, give you guys a range where you could discuss and kind of come to a decision on your own based on what you thought was appropriate. I will say, at least in terms of mini splits, those things are, very, very quiet. The larger mechanicals are a little louder, but air conditioning is not really considered an amenity anymore. If you don't have an AC condenser on the ground, you're going to be putting a window unit in your window. So, you're going to have something of comparable noise level, most likely, regardless of which route we go. So the 50% was basically, just to reiterate, what I thought would provide some meaningful relief.
Yeah.
And actually,
Yeah, and I guess what I'm hearing you say is, based on the requests that you have seen, most of the time it's going from 12 to 6, or it is a 50% request change. Is that correct?
well, yeah, I mean, that would be enough to work with the applicant and the homeowner in order to site it either on one side of the house or the other. Because often, you know, you'll have in the R10 zone a house offset on one side very close to the property line, and then you have like the driveway side.
Mm-hmm.
So often 12 feet is more than what their driveway width is. And then the other side is absolutely kaput. If you reduce it to 50%, that driveway side becomes more viable. You know, the rear yard as well is 30 feet. You know, a lot of these rear yard setbacks are either on top of the house or very close, so that sometimes impinges upon things. I'm not looking to reduce the front yard setback at all.
Right.
You know, you'll keep these mechanicals away from the street, keep them out of sight, if possible. You know, to keep the neighborhood nice. But it's really just to provide some sort of relief. If you wanted to go 75%, you know, I would be shocked if we had any variances come in, you know, for AC units. But having an air conditioning unit, I would think, as you know, is a reasonable use of your property nowadays, and that's part of the zoning regulations in Old Lyme is in seeking a variance if that's a reasonable use of your property. And the question of that 20 years ago might have been, or 30 years ago might have been, no, that's an amenity. You know, not many people have this, but I'm not a big air conditioning guy myself, but some people treat air conditioning like life or death in some circumstances now, for whatever reason. I'm sure our ancestors would laugh, but it's kind of the times we live in, I guess.
Blame Mr. Carrier for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we should go ahead and try the 50% and see how that goes in those 3 zones.
I would agree with that, because a central air compressor outside or one of the mini splits are as noisy as a window unit, and in some cases the Mitsubishis are probably even quieter, and it's more fan noise than anything else. But a central air compressor outside is again just, and you hear mostly fan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a noisemaker. So I agree.
Okay.
I would go with the 50. I would go with the 50% in those 3 zones.
Makes sense.
Okay. Did anybody else? I guess if nobody else had any thoughts on that, you know, I would. I'll run with that. And now we kind of already touched on generators, and obviously I have some work to do. But I guess I'm going to have to move. You know, obviously Matt Willis, the zoning attorney, is going to have to look all this over. Are you okay with kind of how I laid out that particular regulation and just putting that in subsets and, you know, having 764, 765, you know, whatever numbers we need to kind of break those different items out? Does that format kind of make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, if that works for Matt, then that's something I can get a little more solidified with you guys for next week.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to construction storage. So I kind of had, I guess there's 3 parts. Unfortunately, I was trying to get this done quicker so you guys had a little more time to review. Basically, the idea would be we would add a category to special permit, off-site construction and storage. I'd want to add a definition of that, just to tighten that up and make sure that we have included in all the activities that we consider that in there. And so I've left that open. I can certainly list out everything I can kind of think of for next time. That's what I left off. And then right now, I stuck it in a section that we have for temporary construction trailers and things of that nature. And so that's 11.18. And so 0.1, 2, 3, and 4 are filled. So I just went with 11.18.5. And what I did is I tried to mirror some of the restrictions and some of the other regulations. But these were the 5 I could think of at the time that I thought were important in terms of making sure, I have a plan with all their activities that they want to do. Honestly, based on this meeting, add statement of use in there as well, to A. Obviously, from my experience with, in the unfortunate experience of Gorton Ave, and make sure adequate screening is provided. I guess statement of use is partly in C, but I'll have to rework that now that I'm thinking about it.
We should take, out of Gorton Avenue, we should take lessons learned out of that one.
Yeah.
And really apply it to this. So that cannot happen again.
Right, and so that's why I'm putting there, no screening, no crushing, nothing of that nature. Also, at no time, more than a certain amount of, soil products can be stored there. We may want to tweak that from a harder number to something you condition per application, per site, what you thought was appropriate there. And honestly, hours of operation. This is just a draft. I think I want to go back in depth and talk about this with Matt Willis about maybe there's a better way to lay this out so that the commission would have as much latitude as possible in terms of conditioning a site like this. So if the commission deemed it necessary to be there and something they wanted to approve, they could condition it as you saw fit to reduce the impact on whatever neighborhood that could be in to a minimal.
Right.
Yeah.
Because with the sewers coming, the sewers are going to be here for years.
Right.
So that's got to be in place and ready to roll. One of the big concerns is do you allow town property to be used for this purpose, to which I would vehemently oppose.
Well, so what it would be, I mean, you could make that as something that wouldn't be allowed in the regs. But right now I'm just addressing this as any piece of property in town that needs off-site. So it's basically like with the sewers, they're doing the sewer work in the road right of way. They need an off-site area to do work on. So this is what it would apply to. I think Katie brought up last time whether this would affect any single-family residential house construction or any normal construction. Most permits we get in, you want to build a building on that property. You're doing all the work on that property. This is kind of, separating those types of activities out from this.
Right.
So I guess one question I could ask is, are there, and I think I'm missing a few things on here. Is there anything in particular that you could think of off the top of your heads or that might be missing from here? Because, I definitely want to restrict like the crushing and the screening of material on site. That was an issue. Obviously the hours of operation, I want the commission to be able to tailor that per the site in the neighborhood.
Right, because if this is in the beach community, you certainly don't want all of this, like what Gorton Avenue just went through with all the dust and that whole summer season. I mean, that was ridiculous.
Right. So I did have dust control, must be maintained on site at all times. This may be one thing that needs to just be fleshed out a lot more and more detail to be put in, just to make sure that the commission can put the constraints on something like this that are appropriate. So maybe at this point, I'm thinking I need to flesh this out even more for you guys. Have Matt, have some consultations with Matt, just to make this as solid as possible before, this comes up to you guys. But yeah, I would like to move on this a little quicker, basically because partly I want this, and it's not about me, but I'd like to see this in place prior to any sewer application.
The sewers, right?
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Well, until it's in place, they can't do it, right? That's how our regulations read.
Right, yeah.
I'd like to have a
Well,
real,
I felt there was a bit of a hole there, and,
Yeah.
and it kind
I'd
of got
like to have a
exploited.
real setback too, a setback from residential, or
Yeah.
say setbacks from the houses themselves or property lines or whatever, but I want a hard setback, not just screening.
Right,
Okay.
totally.
Yeah, that's exactly what the kind of thing I need help from you guys on is that kind of a thought and idea, because you know, we can have a hard setback and maybe have it to a degree that it's variable where it could be increased more if the commission deems whatever activity they were proposing there, you know, it would be detrimental if it was the hard setback, you know. So let me talk to Matt.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any type of processing going on in these areas. They should simply be a staging area for materials, and that's it.
But that still means big trucks coming and going all the time. I mean,
That's true.
Yeah.
and those, if they're, so it's hours of operation too, and, you know, I
And
understand.
we could limit, I guess, the size of trucks coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But then somebody has to be there to enforce it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, so that's me, and I'll be frank. You know, I don't patrol the streets. I'm not on the beat, so I really rely on complaints from neighbors, and I'm sure I see Bill's still on here. Bill's the one who brought this to my attention in the first place on Gorton Ave, and we went through the whole process and got them to come to zoning, go through zoning permits and all that stuff. So, yeah, the public is integral, and you know, I don't think that's going to change.
But I feel like by the
all
time the public hears it, it's too late. It's already in process, and then it takes months
Oh,
and
no.
months. No?
Once it's, well, that's fair. Once it's in process, I can still stop it. But it's like any other zoning violation. You know, if somebody steps outside of their use, or, you know, whatever permitting they have, or, you know, it's always a process. And, you know, if they're endangering a wetland or something like that, that's more of a zoning emergency. Everything else is more of a hassle or an annoyance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I would hope they wouldn't start this immediately. Normally, I give a little more leeway on my notices of violation and things of that nature. But, you know, if something was really egregious, I could go down to, you know, you need to comply within 10 days. Or, you know, I don't have a fining ability, but our stick is to go to court. And I have never been brought to court personally. I've not had to pay a lawyer to go to court, but, you know, I'm sure it's not cheap. And that's really the stick that I wield, is the threat of you having to go to court and spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on a lawyer to represent you. So,
okay.
Yeah, so, okay. Sorry, I feel like I'm ranting now. I apologize. So
ranting is okay. You weren't whining, so that's okay. Ranting is acceptable.
I'm sure tears will be shed. You'll get my whole story. All right. So I need to check with Matt on I was just going to touch, I guess, on the easy ones first. So the legal notices 4 and 6 are conversations I'm going to have with Matt, but I'm almost positive 6 state statute is done with that. And then it's just checking in our regs and with him as to whether that would be sufficient legal notice. Now, that kind of completes our journey through the easier ones. I guess the only other note I'll make is, again, me, Jane, and Matt set up a meeting on Wednesday. Paul is also going to participate in that to talk about 913 and whether, Jane, we're going to talk about the intent and how it's written, and we're going to go through everything. So we'll be able to report back on that at the next meeting. Now, in terms of the other zoning regulations on here, like height limit, do you guys want to touch on any of that stuff? I haven't done any more work on anything else except, just,
Can I make a suggestion? Can we close
course.
up the ones that we talked about tonight and get to the point where we finish those, and as we're closing them out, then we decide whether we have a special meeting, put it on the next agenda.
Right.
If not,
Works for me.
it's just gonna.
Right. I was gonna just say that because then we won't make any progress. So let's nail these down, make changes, and we know these are done, and now we just move on because the other ones are gonna require a little bit of soul searching and understanding and discussion.
And ranting.
Works for me.
Well, that's Dan, I mean.
Ranting.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So then the coastal resilience and adaptation study. See, that one might be a good discussion, 24-foot thing, but.
I think it'll come up.
And the hazard mitigation plan update, well, we work that constantly. 7, the electric charging stations, we are going to start working on that. I think that'll be the next easiest one we should look at because, we had Tesla come in 2017 and they wanted to put a standalone facility up in the Halls Market Square there right in front of Bowerbird. But the town does not have a zoning regulation for a standalone, I'm going to say a charging farm, because that's what they are. Tesla had agreed to work with then Keith Rosenfeld on developing a standard, but then suddenly just left. They pulled the application and they were gone. So what I talked to Dan about is that we need to have a zoning regulation that talks about a standalone power farm of some sort, something what they call these power stations, which has all the nits in it regarding monitoring and security and what types of nozzles are going to be there possibly. So depending on where it's put, there's a ton of trucks on order by UPS, I believe, and FedEx. I don't know where they're going to charge. They claim they're going to charge in their depots, but something we should just keep in the back of our mind. That would be one part of the regulation. The other part of the regulation comes in if a new parking facility or a new shopping area is going in, is there going to be a requirement to provide charging stations in that area, as Big Y did in the old Saybrook plaza that they built. There are electric charging stations there. So I think we should look at things of that nature. And if there's an expansion to a parking area, do we then add a requirement for electric charging? So that's a second area. A third area may be if we're looking at on-street areas where we might, if someone might be interested in, or if the town might be interested in doing on-street parking, or maybe in front of a large establishment. I don't know, but there's other areas. So Dan has been looking in other towns in the area to get some benchmarks, and then, but that's something that probably is I believe is the next piece of low-hanging fruit, because I don't think it's going to be long before we get knocks on the door from another interested party looking to put in a charging farm, because our easy off, easy on access to 95 is tempting. By the way, Tesla, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but Tesla did put the farm in the New London shopping area. So if you're southbound on 95, where the ShopRite is and Home Goods, that plaza there in New London, you'll see that Tesla had put their farm in there.
I saw that.
Hey, Paul, just real quick. So what I was thinking is I'd like to move that out of old business, and we'll just stick it in there with the discussion of zoning regulation changes.
That
Does
sounds
make sense to you?
excellent. Sure,
Okay.
sure.
And then I did speak with Chris Costa about this earlier today. In one easy solution, at least for like the Big Y scenario, or even in the Halls Road strip mall area, they just use the electric charging stations as an accessory use to whatever business is there. So I believe Big Y only came in for a special permit modification to have those installed. So they actually don't even have that on the books in Old Saybrook, and so that's why I was reading the regs for 3 hours and I couldn't find it.
Okay.
But that's not there. So they have a kind of a looser relationship with the electric charging stations, and Chris had kind of indicated that if somebody wanted to come in for a standalone station, they treat it more like they have it more along the gas station process for approval in their books. But so we may be able to go simply with an accessory structure for a place that already has a special permit approved, and then we can maybe craft some other things. I was trying to look in like West Hartford, Westport, Manchester, because they had the mall there. So I'm trying to peruse some different zoning regulations to see what I can come up with for you guys to look at, so we don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel.
Right. And I would like to be ahead of the curve on this, because electric vehicles are coming, even if they're initially just for a little, roundabout towns or short trips, but they're coming. And there, that there's going to be opportunities to put in an electric station versus a gas station. So, I'd like to be ahead of the curve. James.
And so, Dan, when we were looking at it in the Big Y parking lot, it's not really an accessory use to that Big Y establishment. It's nothing to do with it. So it was just that they had some real estate and they were going to stick it over, and it would have definitely conflicted with the Halls Road plan, because it was going to go right smack in the area where they would want it not to go. So saying that these things are accessory uses to just anything is really not so. So I look at them myself as standalone uses regardless, because they're just using the fact that somebody has a parking lot. There's nothing accessory about it. If you have Stop and Shop, what's accessory about having a charging station to Stop and Shop? It's convenient, all right, but so would a bank be and everything else. So I just think it has to be designed as a standalone use that could possibly go on another property. We could say that it's possible, but it still has to be completely, because it's going to be owned by Tesla, and it's not going to be owned by the company that owns the property. So I just never have thought it. Maybe Saybrook does stuff. It sounds like Saybrook does all kinds of stuff, but that we should have it be an actual use, but it could double up on a parking lot or something like that. But it should be regulated as a separate use.
I agree. It's a 21st century gas station.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, have you heard any chatter about anybody possibly wanting to put a charging station? I'm just curious.
No, I haven't. There is a group in Old Lyme. I don't recall their names, but they are very interested in seeing. I guess it's just a group of electric car owners in Old Lyme, and I've had repeated conversations with them about this. So there is interest in the public.
So are the charging stations that are down by the DEP, are those usable by the public?
I do not know. I didn't know there were charging stations.
There's a bunch of them down there. I went walking down there. They're right in front of that DEP wildlife building, right in their parking.
Really?
They on state property?
They're on state property, yeah.
And then my guess is they probably might not be public.
I think they're public though, because they're in the public parking spots, and I don't see, there's nothing.
They're exempt from zoning.
You can't use them.
Aren't they exempt from zoning on the state land?
No. So the siting council, like the Connecticut Siting Council, approved something like a cell tower like the solar project that's going in here in town, that's exempt from zoning. But like when the state built that building, I guess the state can technically be exempt from zoning if they want to be in certain circumstances. But I don't know.
That would
that's a little
be
dicey.
that's a good question. Do we know whether they came to town for a permit?
If Jane's here and she doesn't remember, no.
No, I was surprised to see them there, but
It couldn't have been that long ago, right?
what?
Wouldn't
couldn't have
they
been
have needed a Wouldn't they have needed a permit to do that, or is the state, here we go, exempt?
I'm pretty sure it's exempt because I remember running this to Madison when they were doing improvements off the interstate, like because the interstate was they didn't have to do like the McDonald's and all that stuff. They didn't have to go through the local zoning because it was on state right away.
How many stations are there? Do we know?
Dan, can you check that for us?
I think there are 3, maybe, or 4, somewhere like that.
I'm gonna have to check it for me. It's bothering me.
Yeah. Dan, please handle.
The reason I noticed them, they had some kind of a funny comment on them that didn't make any sense. About it said a no charging station and no, and they didn't mean what they said on the sign.
You mean ready kilowatt wasn't stenciled on the outside?
You'll get a real charge out of this. No.
Oh, there we go. Right.
I think it was that there was no charge for using the station. So it said there would be no charge. And I said, well, that's the funniest thing ever to stick that on a charging station.
Wow. Is that our taxes at work?
I think so.
Interesting.
Get a quick search here, and it says that it says that this government's use of its own property is immune from municipal zoning and other land use controls.
So then, are they the states for the state's use, or are they for the public as well?
Oh, I think the public can use them. I don't think there's anything stopping people from using them. I think that was basically DEEP's idea, is that they're being environmentally responsible by setting some up so people can use them.
Wow, free juice.
What I'm really interested to see is that they pulled building permits. That's what I'm really curious about.
Well, if they're
They would
exempt, is
definitely have
state
to pull
property
building permits.
exempt?
I don't think from building permits. I think Michael could be right about zoning, so be it. But I'll dig into this one.
Dan, please handle. All right.
On a side note, while we're having this discussion about DEP, I've been approached by somebody at DEP about the restaurant, and maybe Jane, you can shed some light on this. But do you recall? And I was just looking through the minutes. Where the Hangry Goose is, there's a bench that's out there that was, it's required that 1 or 2 of the parking spots through the coastal site plan review has to be dedicated for this bench for people to sit at to look at the marsh. And they weren't even familiar with it, but a DEP individual brought it up to me because he's trying to get this condition taken off of that property. Do you recall anything like that? Or at the time it would have been, I forget the name of the restaurant that was there before the Hangry Goose, but.
Yeah, it's the Hangry Goose. Yeah, Michael, I actually spoke to an attorney for the property owner there.
Yep.
And he raised a couple concerns to me, and I squashed them. One was a fire safety question. I talked to the fire marshal. He had no problem. Basically, the 2 parking spots that are supposed to be reserved. Okay, so the property owner that owns the Hangry Goose was approved via special permit to get a dock there for personal use, I think.
Yes, it was.
The condition from DEP was he maintain, I think, that bench and provide 2 parking spots for people who want to have access to the water. Because the DEP is trying to provide public access to, the rivers and water bodies, because Connecticut, for whatever reason in its development, has a extremely high portion of beaches and and like waterfront property owned by the privately, whereas in other states it's not quite the same. So they're trying to increase access to that. So yeah, I did speak with the landowner's lawyer, and I informed him that the town zoning has no issue with that, and that was a condition of his approval via deep. So
okay, so that condition,
I told him.
The guy at Deep asked me to dig into this a little deeper, saying, like, look, did your local zoning put this condition on, or is this a condition that was applied by us? Because if it's a condition applied by them, they're going to get it removed. And they were trying to find out and confirm that it wasn't also a condition of the approval on the zoning end, because if it is, they'd like to see it.
I think it's both, but honestly, I'd be surprised if Deep removed that. I know the property owner wants to remove it. I'd be surprised if Deep did.
I'm pretty connected up there, and they're specific individuals, because basically it's such a small parking lot. The guy shouldn't have to dictate 2 of his parking spots to a park bench that you can literally just go across the street and park for free, not use his parking spot. So okay,
there's no public parking there, Michael. There's no public parking there. Where would you park?
Where, over on the water side? You're talking about on the Halls Road side? Or
yeah, the Hanger Goose side, because it was part of his dock approval.
No, I'm saying like DEP wants to lift the condition that he has to designate 2 of his parking spots. They want to remove the condition altogether, because they feel like
DEP does, or the property owner does.
DEP does. DEP is the one that approached it. It wasn't the property owner.
Yeah, no, it's a DEP requirement. He approached me, and I told them they'd have to work with Deep. But from my perspective,
it wasn't on the town, because the Deep official was asking me, and I just wanted to confirm. All right,
yeah,
sorry,
no, as far as I know, that's a Deep requirement that the town. Now the town may have put that. I'll have to double check. That may have been stuck into their special permit approval for that dock. So
got it.
There may be part of his special permit approval from that dock that they follow all of Deep's requirements were to have 2 parking spots there.
And for sure.
I have to rebuff a little bit about the parking situation over there, because the Hangry Goose, I believe when the restaurant went in there, the parking lot was expanded to meet parking for that area, and I believe those 2 spots were taken into account. So he has all the parking he required via zoning.
Oh yeah, I know that. I know I know it's a weird thing that the DEP approached me about, because I've been working with them on some other stuff. But it was something they were trying to get lifted off of that property. If they just wanted me to confirm if it was required and if it was a condition under our approval. So I got it.
Have them give me a call.
We'll talk about it later. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Let's move on to item 8. Moving towards home plate. Approval of the minutes of the February 16th, 2021 public hearing and regular meeting. Is there any discussion on those?
Yeah, I have one correction.
Okay.
It came in from a member of the public. At one point, I had referenced Blood Street Skulls in our discussion on, I believe, 913. They are actually Blood Street Partners. So just make that small change.
Okay. That's on the February 16th.
Correct.
Okay. So with that change, I'll take a motion to approve. Maria, second.
Second.
Second is Alan. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed and abstained. Okay. 16th, February 16th, meeting minutes are approved. The minutes of the January 11th, 2021 public hearing and regular meeting. Is there any discussion on those? Okay, if no discussion, I'll take a motion for approval.
So moved.
Jane, second.
Second.
Tammy, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye, okay. Okay, passes. Correspondence, do you have any correspondence, Dan, or anything to talk about?
No, we don't.
No?
Well, if you wanted to just share why we put chairman update on there. Or
Well, yeah, that was
you
a
want me to?
surprise. So is this where I get to tell a short story or a fractured fairy tale?
Well, so in my past towns, we've had public comment on every single agenda, just in case people wanted to say something. Kim Barrows thought that could be dangerous, and in a situation or two, especially I saw my DBA chair get, no one swore or anything, but someone talked down to her pretty hard to the point where I felt bad for her. So Kim Barrows thought it might be a little more prudent to kind of have a chairman's update or a chairman's section where he could allow members from the public to speak if he wanted to, or give kind of any soliloquy, or I don't know, any sort of information that he felt was necessary. So I didn't know if I had warned Paul about this, but obviously if any of the commission members or Paul himself has any thoughts on that, I'm certainly open to them.
I've never felt a lack of that particular item on the agenda. People seem to speak their own mind regardless.
They
Yeah.
do. It makes my life a little easier when I tell them they actually have a forum to do so. But obviously, if that's not something you want, we don't need to have it. If anything is a public hearing or anything like that, they have an opportunity to speak then. But it tends to make people feel it's a little more democratic process if they can kind of give input at a meeting.
If I felt that we were always had nothing to do at the meetings, I'd feel one way, but I like the organization of knowing, which ones are going to be the long ones and the short ones. And that always seems to, they do that in Deep River too, and it always just makes the meetings last so much longer because it's the unorganized public.
Yeah.
Right. So I know if the chairman update would give Paul the latitude to be, you have something to say it for 2 minutes, something like that. That was the thought. Certainly Kim Barrows' idea to do that was better than my idea. So whatever you guys want to do.
Well, Chairman, you can decide.
I'm not crazy about it.
Mm-mm.
I just think that
like
might
power?
open up that. I do like power. That's why I don't like it. So
They can get on our agenda. They just have to come earlier to ask.
yeah, let's make it more organized. If we want to keep it on there, and let me kind of go off and dissertate on useless information, that's fine. But to have it to address a situation that we maybe have addressed or in the process of addressing, I think we should address that in that area. I don't think that we should then open this up for like people just waiting to trounce, because I agree with Jane. The meeting will never come to an end.
I agree.
Okay, so I'm going to strike that off the.
Yeah, let's not do that, because I think there's plenty of opportunity for folks to talk, especially in public hearings, and we certainly have history of that to prove.
Yeah. What I'll do is I will direct them like I did to the 2 letters in correspondence that I sent to you guys.
Right.
I'll just have to provide a written statement or something like that.
Right.
That way,
That sounds good.
You got it. We don't have to rehash it in public. For all time to remember us on YouTube.
Right. Unfortunately, Grandfather Clock is speaking, and I have to speak at the same time. As Mr. Green Jeans or the captain would say. Okay. So we still are waiting for the October 13th and November 9th minutes, which I think are coming. That's good. We'll address those. Correspondence, we talked about chair update. Okay. We're at that big spot with the big clock on the wall says 9 o'clock. I will take a motion if there's nothing else to discuss. Maria says not so fast.
So moved, so moved.
Oh, so moved. Oh, okay.
Adjourn.
A motion to adjourn by Maria and seconded by
Second.
Alan. Alan seconds it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And opposed or abstained? Good. The February meeting of the Old Lyme Zoning Commission 2021 is hereby closed.
March meeting.
March. Thank you.
Winter.
All right, everyone.
Have a great
Thank you
night,
so much. Take care.
Bye.
Good night.